Chapter 10. Simone was lying on his back, considering what to include in his latest journal entry, when he realized he wasn't alone. Swinging his feet around, he sat up and saw Ripley standing there just inside the doorway, staring at him. "When did you come in?" he asked. "Some time ago," she told him. It gave Simone the creeps that she had been standing there without his knowing it. However, he was too interested in the reason for her visit to worry a lot about anything else. "To what do I owe the honor?" he asked. "You've been wondering where we're going," she said, "and why that ship attacked us, and if there's a connection between the two." "It crossed my mind," he admitted. "Maybe it's time people knew what we know. Someone like you can tell them." "If that's what you want," he said, feeling like a starving man at a banquet table. "I'd be happy to oblige." Ripley frowned at him for a moment. Finally, she said, "You know what happened on the Nostromo?" The Nostromo, he thought, surprised she would bring that up. That was 300 years ago. It was in the banned histories, she noted. Yes, he said. "I remember. You landed on the planet Acheron in response to what you thought was a distress call. A party led by Kane, the executive officer, went to find the source of the call and came across a nest full of big leathery eggs, the likes of which no one had ever seen before. Kane descended among the eggs and was attacked by a creature hiding in one of them, a small grabby thing. He went into a coma with the thing still stuck to his face, and when he awoke, the creature was dead and Kane seemed right as Rigel. Trouble was, he had an alien embryo growing inside him, which eventually burst out of his chest," Ripley continued, "splintering his ribcage and killing him. We couldn't go back into stasis with a creature running around the ship, so we made plans to track it down. But all the while it was growing, maturing. Soon it was an adult, capable of reducing a man to bloody bone fragments and tatters of flesh. Little by little, it took the lives of the Nostromo's crew. First Brett, then Captain Dallas, and Parker and Lambert. It would have killed me too, but I got lucky." Simone held up his hand. Hang on. The histories say the alien met its match in you." Ripley let out a laugh. "I was lucky. Even now, I'm no match for a full-grown alien. No one is." "But you're a survivor," he said. "That's documented." She shrugged. "I died, didn't I?" He was about to point out that her death had been only a temporary condition, but he didn't want to get too far off track. Right, he said. "Go on." "We were pretty unlucky," said Ripley, "that the Nostromo was the one to receive that distress signal, and even more unlucky that Kane went into that nest and got himself impregnated, and that the alien wound up inside our ship, running loose. At least, that's what I thought when my crewmates started dying around me. But I found out otherwise. In fact, it was all part of a carefully orchestrated plan. The Nostromo was picked in advance to be the vessel that would set down on Acheron, because someone knew there was a nest full of alien life forms there. And when we sent a team to investigate, in accordance with our orders, it was no accident that one of us got an alien planted inside him." Simone thought he knew where she was going with this. Morse said Weyland-Yutani wanted the aliens for their bioengineering division. Morse was right, Ripley said. But he didn't know all of it. For starters, he didn't know about Ash. Simone shook his head. Ash? Ripley looked as if she had eaten something rancid. An android, first generation. Of course, Captain Dallas didn't know that when Ash was assigned to him. The captain thought Ash was just another company science officer. A guy named Umbulu had worked for the previous 5 halls on the Nostromo, and Dallas liked the work he had done. So Umbulu was all set to work a 6th hall. But 2 days before the ship's scheduled departure from Hideous, Umbulu vanished. Left a message for the captain saying something had come up. That left the door open for Ash, Weyland-Yutani's chosen replacement. But he wasn't there to make scientific judgments and observations. He was there to make certain we brought the company an alien. What he called an encephalopod. Interesting, thought Simone. What did he do? Ripley's jaw muscles rippled. After Dallas and Lambert brought Kane back to the ship, I refused to open the hatch for them. I was concerned about the organism compromising our environment. Ash ignored my status as ranking officer on board, not to mention the science division's rules about quarantine, and let the party in. At first I thought he had acted rashly because he was eager to examine an unknown life form. Then he did and said things that told me it was more than that. For instance, Ash was studying Kane's medical scans on a regular basis. He should have seen the embryo developing inside him, but he never said anything. After Dallas was killed, I got hold of Ash's key when he wasn't looking, and I used it to access Mother, the ship's computer. She confirmed that Ash was protecting the alien from us, making it difficult for us to catch it. Mother also mentioned something called Special Order 937. Before I could find out more, Ash came after me, tried to shove a rolled-up magazine down my throat. Parker walloped him with a steel rod, decapitating him, or he would have killed me. Later, we connected Ash's head to a power source, looking for answers. He told us that Special Order 937 directed him to take the ship to Acheron, investigate a life form, and bring it back for observation. With discretion, of course. In other words, Simone suggested, without letting the rest of you know his agenda. It was the company's agenda, Ripley reminded him. Ash was just their puppet. Simone digested the information, merging it with what he already knew. So, the signal you picked up, that was set up by the company as well? No, she said. It was sent out by an alien, but not the kind we've been talking about. He found himself smiling. I think you've lost me. What other kind is there? Kane didn't find those eggs in a cavern, said Ripley. He found them in the hold of a ship, an alien ship with an alien pilot, whose chest had exploded, giving birth to an encephalopod. A chill climbed the rungs of Simone's spine. You mean a sentient being? From another world? That's right. He was about 5 meters tall and covered with a layer of alien residue, but there was no mistaking that he had once been a thinking being. Holy shit! Simone thought. Did you actually see him? Not firsthand, said Ripley, but Dallas saw him and sent the image back to the Nostromo. The reporter slumped back against the bulkhead. You know how goddamn big this is? Another sentient species out there, sharing the universe with us? I know how big, said Ripley. All right, said Simone. So the signal, it came from this alien pilot? Maybe he had some kind of tech problem, so he sat down on Acheron and sent out a distress call. But before anybody could answer it, his chest burst open and he died. And the alien inside him must have been a queen, or Kane would never have discovered all those eggs. A queen, said Ripley. Yes. Then the Nostromo answered the signal, he said, trying to bring things full circle. And Kane was impregnated. And Ash let the standing party back on the... Wait a minute. Something's missing, said Simone. Weyland-Yutani already knew there was a life form on Acheron. That's why they woke you out of cryo. That's why they sent Ash along. They heard the signal, Ripley suggested in a devil's advocate kind of way, and knew it wasn't from a human ship. He considered the idea and rejected it. Ash was operating under that order you mentioned. If he were after the pilot, he would have found a way to bring it aboard. Instead, he let the landing party return without it. So, said Ripley, it was an encephalopod he wanted. But how did the company know such a thing existed? And how did Ash know the organism on Kane's face would deposit an embryo inside him? Simone frowned. Weyland-Yutani had to know the alien's modus operandi before it got wind of the signal. Right, said Ripley, which means the company sent a team to Acheron in advance of the Nostromo. He shook his head. No, then that team could have brought back the alien on its own. He tried to read his host's expression. So Weyland-Yutani never sent a team. They learned of the alien's presence there through someone else. Such as? I don't know, said Simone. The military? No, the military would have moved in on its own. Who knew the pilot's ship had landed on Acheron? Only the pilot's people, he said reflexively. Then he considered the implications. They're the ones who told Weyland-Yutani about what was on Acheron. But that would mean... We spoke to them, said Ripley. In fact, we had already been speaking to them for a long time. It just got better and better. Who's we? You mean EarthGov? She shook her head. An organization whose only purpose is to facilitate a series of transactions between the pilot species and various elements of human civilization. Transactions? Simone echoed. Human civilization wasn't lacking in anything he could think of. Its only problem was getting raw materials from one world to another, and ultimately to Earth. Originally, said Ripley, the idea was to eliminate any areas of conflict before they could escalate into reasons for war. But after a while, it became more of a clearinghouse. If we wanted something the pilot's people could provide, we traded them something they couldn't get on their own, and vice versa. A good deal of the time these transactions involved theft, slavery, or murder. But EarthGov had the luxury of disassociating itself from all of it. Unbelievable, Simone thought. How did you find all this out? Call caught onto it. She had hacked into EarthGov's mainframe before she left Earth the first time, and gotten the first hints then. But they were so subtle it took a long time for her to pull it all together. She called the organization Loki, after a shadowy and elusive god in one of Earth's ancient pantheons. After a while, the rest of us started using that name for it too. It was Loki who learned from the pilot species what was on Acheron, and it was Loki who passed the information on to Weyland-Yutani, prompting the company to insert Ash into the crew and issue Special Order 937. What did the pilot's people get in return? Asked Simone. A human research colony on a world called Bagreb, which they seized without a fight a year or so later. The aliens were that important to us? Ripley grunted disdainfully. At the time the Nostromo landed on Acheron, EarthGov was battling political insurgents in the Plexes. It needed a bioweapon to clean them out. EarthGov was going to unleash encephalopods in the Plexes? It sounded insane. EarthGov didn't understand what it was dealing with, she said. No one ever does. Simone had to take Ripley's word for it. He had never seen an alien, only heard accounts of them from ex-military types who had served on the Auriga, or claimed to. And the people who attacked us? Loki, said Ripley, trying to stop us from interfering in one of their deals with the pilot's people. They have the resources to clear away obstacles like the Betty, and you can be sure EarthGov will look the other way. Then why did they board us? Why not just destroy the Betty and be done with it? Because, she said, they wanted to know how much we knew, and who else might know it. And the only way they could do that was by seizing us and our computers. And when they failed, they killed themselves. He had to admit that smacked of an intense need for secrecy. But then there were fanatics all over the place. One didn't have to posit 300-year-old conspiracies to explain them. So what deal is it we're interfering with? He asked. EarthGov gets clearance to colonize a world rich in minerals, which the pilot's people had laid claim to some time ago. And the pilot's people get a colony full of human hosts. Hosts? He echoed uncomfortably. You mean the way you were a host? Exactly, said Ripley. The pilot's people have obtained some eggs and seem eager to grow a pack of aliens. We haven't figured out why, but we know where. And we intend to stop it. That's where we're headed then, the reporter asked. To save a human colony. That's where we're headed, Ripley confirmed. So what do you think, Simone? Any chance people will believe this? He thought about it for a moment, then shook his head. Not a chance. At least at first. But after a while, it'll start attracting some believers. Not that it matters, she said. Loki's too good at moving in the shadows. But if it makes them the least bit uncomfortable, that'll be a good thing. And if it makes me famous, Simone thought, it will be a good thing too. After all, in the final analysis, he didn't care about Ripley or Call or humanity. He cared about himself. And a story like this would make him king of the web writers, then and forevermore. Pandor was beginning to remember. He could see the leathery-looking ovoid in the cryotube and the ghostly white, spider-like thing at its core. He felt again his surprise at the way it shot out at him, and his horror as he realized it was going to choke him to death. Apparently, it had stopped short of that. "Well?" said Saigo, who was sitting next to him. Pandor blinked and looked at him. "What is it?" "I asked you to pass the bread, for God's sakes! 3 times. "Don't exaggerate," said Pandor, returning his attention to the dinner table and locating the bread basket. "It is not an exaggeration," said Saigo, as he accepted the napkin-lined red plastic basket and removed a small, soft dinner roll. He looked to the others who were seated with them along the long aluminium alloy table in the mess hall. "Am I right?" Cody shrugged. I wasn't listening." "Me either," said Gogolak. "The hell you weren't," said Saigo. He returned to Shepard. "Did you hear me ask him for the basket?" Benedict, who was seated immediately to Pandor's right, said, "What's the difference? You got the bread rolls, didn't you?" Saigo scowled at him. "It is a goddamn conspiracy. You're all out to make me insane." "For God's sakes," Gogolak interjected. "It's just a bread basket. Give over already." Just then the door to the room slid aside, revealing the octagonal corridor beyond. Philip was standing on the threshold, holding a tray of steaming food. "All right," he said, his burden filling the room with the savory smells of seasoned tomato sauce and baked cheeses. "Buon appetito, everybody." It was Thursday night. They always ate Italian on Thursdays. Placing the tray on the edge of the table, Philip offloaded 3 big white ceramic dishes. A bowl full of Caesar salad, a platter covered with eggplant parmigiana, and another platter piled with baked ziti. All homemade, Pandor reflected, as if they had a choice in the matter. "No meat," Saigo observed. "Again." "As you know," said Philip, "meat's at a premium around here until the next supply ship." "So I've heard," Saigo replied dryly. "However," Philip rejoined, "we did dig something up for the seafood lovers among us." As he spoke the words, the door slid aside again, and Angie came in, dwarfed by the platter in her hands. "Calamari marinara," she announced in her best Italian accent, which wasn't very good at all. Pandor found himself smiling. Calamari was his favorite dish, bar none. "Where did you find it?" "Behind the carrot cake," said Angie, setting her platter down on the table. "Didn't even know it was there until this morning." Philip clapped Pandor on the shoulder. "Just the thing to get you back to full strength, eh?" "I certainly hope so," said Pandor. "I don't know how you can eat that stuff," said Saigo, pinching his features for emphasis. "Like this," said Benedict, spooning an oversized, sauce-drenched mound of calamari onto his plate. "And like this." With his fingers, he picked up a large, meaty ring of squid flesh and popped it into his mouth. Then he chewed it with exaggerated gusto. Saigo rolled his eyes and looked away, but Hendrix chuckled, as she often did at Benedict's antics. "You two are like children," Gogolak said of Saigo and Benedict. "And nasty children at that." Benedict handed Pandor the serving spoon and said, for Saigo's benefit, "Dig in, Elijah. It's a nice batch. Tender, flavorful. I'll have to send my compliments to the laser defroster." "Thanks," said Pandor, taking the spoon and using it to put some of the calamari on his plate. As he did so, he saw a cluster of squid tentacles poking out from the red sauce. It made him stop in mid-motion. Hadn't the creature's limbs looked a little like that before they wrapped themselves around his face? "What's the matter?" asked Angie. Pandor felt everyone's eyes on him. Nothing," he said, smiling to reassure them. "Really." He dug his fork into the calamari and put some in his mouth. Benedict was right. It was delicious, and with an effort he was able to force the image of the creature from his mind. After all, his ordeal was over, and he was recuperating nicely. Angie had said so. His throat didn't hurt anymore, and he didn't feel dehydrated. Except for a little weariness now and then, one would never know he had been in a coma a couple of days earlier. The whole thing was so bizarre, so unlike anything he had ever heard of. But it was behind him. Shepard had gone through the supply bay a second time to allay Saigo's fears, and hadn't found anything. There was no sign of any other ovoids, or, more importantly, any other creatures. Whatever had latched onto Pandor had been a one-of-a-kind passenger. Of course, they were still waiting for a response from Dome's Gamma as to where it had come from. It seemed unlikely that Murakami was raising such creatures on purpose. So where had they picked up the ovoid? And were there others hidden somewhere on Gamma, biding their time until they could spring at unsuspecting botanists? Benedict interrupted Pandor's thoughts with a sound of contentment. "You don't know what you're missing, Saigo." "Leave him alone," said Gogolak. "All I'm doing," said Benedict, "is introducing him to the finer things in life. That's not a crime, is it?" "What you're doing," said Gogolak, glaring at Benedict, "is nettling him, for no reason." "You're a mind reader?" asked Benedict. "I didn't know that." He turned to Philip. "Did you?" "Triss," said the administrator in a conciliatory tone. "This is unnecessary," Benedict ventured. "Uncalled for. Or is it just that everyone's too damned sensitive around here?" "That's enough," said Shepard. "Why?" asked Benedict. "Because you say it is. You're a safety officer, not the dinner police." "He's right, Triss," said Philip, backing Shepard up for once. "You need to settle down." Pandor was about to agree when he felt a pressure in his chest, just behind his sternum. It felt as if something was pushing to get out of him, and though at first it was just uncomfortable, it rapidly evolved into something more than that. "Ah, it hurts," he thought. This time, everyone was too focused on Benedict to see the expression on Pandor's face, which must have been an unpleasant one. Pressing his fist against his chest, he tried to relieve the pressure, but it didn't help. The pain was getting intolerable. Looking down, Pandor saw a small red blotch on his shirt front. It was marinara sauce, a dollop he hadn't noticed, right? But it looked to him a lot like blood. As if he had been stabbed, and hell, it felt as if he were being stabbed. But not from the outside, from within. "Elijah?" someone said. Then they were all looking at him again, and he couldn't reassure them as he had before, because this time he had a feeling he might be in trouble. Grimacing, he felt the pressure build into something agonizing, something he couldn't take sitting down. "Elijah!" someone cried out, louder this time than the last. As he got to his feet, his fist pushing against his chest, he heard the scrape of chairs on the floor and the rapid-fire issuing of orders. Abruptly, his colleagues were all around him, taking him by the arms and ushering him out of the mess hall. Until, halfway to the door, Pandor felt something emerge from him. The loudest, longest, most unmannerly burp he had ever had occasion to issue in his entire life. But all of a sudden, the pressure was gone, and so, it seemed, was the sense of urgency among Pandor's colleagues. "What the hell?" said Cody. Angie began to laugh. It was a beautiful sound, like the pealing of little bells. "Man, are you all right?" asked Shepard. Pandor nodded, his cheeks hot with embarrassment. "I'm fine. Just a little gas was all." "How lucky are we?" asked Benedict. Gogolak turned to him. "Just shut up, all right?" "I think," said Angie, still chuckling a little, "your digestive system is just working out the kinks. There was nothing in you for a while, and then you stuffed yourself. There were bound to be a few anomalies." Pandor managed a smile. "Is that what you call them?" Saigo muttered something to himself and returned to the table. Exchanging looks of relief, the others joined him, Pandor included. But when their banter started up again, it was less contentious. A good thing, Pandor reflected. He discovered his appetite wasn't the least bit diminished by his rather unsettling experience. In fact, having cleared out some room in his digestive tract, he was even hungrier than before. Which made it a bit easier to ignore the tentacles.